Hello everyone and welcome back to another math video. Today we're going to be looking at domain and range. Just a reminder, this is the normal version of this lesson. If you'd like the speedrun version where we go pretty quickly, I will link that in the description below. All right, your 30-second recap starts now. Here's what you have to know before you start this lesson. Firstly, you should know about graphing, okay, how to find a point on a graph, right? If I say 2, 3, you should be able to put that on a graph. Secondly, you should already know about compound inequalities and how to read this less than, greater than, or equal to, and you should know about closed circle versus open circles. These two topics, if you don't know them, please don't start this lesson. I will link refresher videos in the description below. Please go watch those before you start this lesson. All right, new lesson starts now. Here we go. Domain and range. So let's talk about domain first. Domain is, we're talking about x values only x values, and we're looking at left and right. Okay, and left and right because this is the x-axis, right? And the x-axis goes left and right. So let's label our points here. So on the left side here, this is -8, 9, and on the right side we have 4, 6. And now, again, we're talking about domain, so let's look at the x values. So that would be -8 and 4 are sort of our ends here. So let's do -8, leave some space in the middle, 4, and we're going to put an x in the middle. And now, let's start from the -8. The -8, which direction does the graph go? Is it going to the left or is it going to the right? Well, it's going to the right. And on the x-axis, from -8, I should have done an open circle, -8, it goes to the right. And as I go to the right, those values get bigger and bigger and bigger. So we would say that x has to be greater than -8. And notice it's an open circle on the graph, so that means no line underneath it. And now let's look at the 4. Okay. The 4, again, only on the x-axis, is a closed circle, and it's going to the left. So as I go to the left, the numbers get smaller and smaller and smaller. So we say x has to be less than or equal to 4. Okay, because it's a closed circle, so we need a line underneath it. For the range, should make sense here that for the range, we're going to look at the y values. And we're looking at up and down here. So let's start left and right. So 9 and 6 with a y in the middle. And let's start from the 9. So 9 is an open circle, and this graph goes down, right? So those numbers are getting smaller as I go down. So we would say y has to be less than 9. And now let's look at the 6. So the 6 is a closed circle on the y-axis, and we're going up, right? This graph goes up from the 6. So those numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger, so we'd say y has to be greater than or equal to 6. Here is your domain and range. All right, here's our cool clock for today, which means that it is time for you to practice what you just learned. Go ahead and pause the video and try these 2 problems on your own, and when you're ready, you can unpause the video and we'll check your answers. Okay, now that you've had time to work these problems, let's check your solutions. Okay, for the first problem, you should have gotten a domain, x has to be greater than -1 but less than 4, and the range, y has to be greater than -8 but less than 7. And for the second problem, you should have gotten that x has to be greater than or equal to -4 but less than or equal to 5. And the range should have gotten y is less than or equal to 6, but greater than or equal to -3. Now for this problem, something a little different here. You will notice that on this end, there's an arrow. Okay, it's not a circle, closed or open circle. So let's see how this works. So our point here is -4, 8. And so the domain, let's look at the x values, that'd be -4. The domain starts at -4 with an open circle and goes to infinity, right? Keeps going to the right. That's what the arrow means on the graph. So it keeps going to the right, keeps going up and up and up. So we say that x has to be greater than -4 because x values are increasing. And now for the y value, we start at 8, and we're going open circle in a downwards direction, right? So those numbers are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So we say that y has to be less than 8. So pay attention to, if there's an arrow at the end, it means it keeps going. All right, time to practice. Go ahead and pause the video, try these on your own. When you're ready, unpause and we'll check them. Okay, now that you've had time to work these problems, let's check your solutions. Okay, for the first problem, you should have gotten that x is greater than or equal to -4 and y is greater than or equal to -6. For the second problem, maybe a little bit tricky problem here because we didn't talk about what happens when you have arrows on both ends. Arrows on both ends. Well, domain is left and right, the x values, right? Well, this graph keeps going left and it keeps going right to infinity. And so the way we write that is we say domain is all real numbers. And for this graph, the range is actually the same, right? Because this graph keeps going up and it keeps going down to infinity. So the range is the same answer, all real numbers. Okay, what happens with a horizontal line? For a horizontal line, let's start with the point we know. So this would be 7, -2. And let's pick some other points on the line just to show something here. This is 1, -2. This would be, I don't know, -5, -2. You'll notice all of the y values are -2 on this line, all of them, okay? And so for our range, we're going to say that the range y equals -2. It's always -2. It never changes, okay? For the domain, we start at 7. So we start at 7 with an open circle, and we're going to the right. To the left, right? And, right. So we're going to the left. Numbers are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, so we would say that x has to be smaller than 7 for the domain. All right, time to practice. Go ahead and pause the video. Try these two on your own. When you're ready, unpause and we'll check them. Okay, now that you've had time to work these problems, let's check your solutions. For the first problem, you should have said the domain is all real numbers because there's arrows on the left and right side, so it keeps going left and right. The range is y equals 5. And for the second problem, we should have gotten that x has to be greater than or equal to -7, but less than or equal to 5, and the range is y equals 2. All right, that is it for today. I hope you all have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.